Right. So here I am, Northern California. The years that we lived on the river, inside the river in the tent, and then later in the Hoover House. I was an industrious young man, and I was looking for employment. I had my paper out before in San Diego. I knew the importance of getting a job, and so I started putting word out. Now we're super isolated up there in the woods, living along the Klamath River. The Quigley's General Store, I could put a little flyer up saying that, labor seeking odd jobs, and I started getting, different odd jobs. One of the first ones I got was shoveling gravel for that Quigley's store and campsite. In the back, I would be just, they had a big giant piles of gravel, and I'd be loading up pickup trucks with it. It was hard work, but I got a reputation as a hard worker. From there, I got another job digging ditches up along the side of the mountains up there. There are a lot of waterways that needed clearing, and a lot of new cut-throughs needed to be dug out for irrigation. I got in like a little work crew. There was a number of guys in there, and I remember, hot summer days on the side of a steep mountain grade with a pick and a shovel for hours at a time, and looking at the people I was working with. They're some intense laborers there, and I remember looking at the musculature of the guys I'm working with and how their backs and their muscles were all just custom built for ditch digging. This is what they've been doing, and as I worked, and it was hard work, wondering, gosh, this could be, people end up doing this, kind of realizing that, gosh, you get good at something and your body begins to conform and adapt, that you can do more of it, and realizing that I don't want to be stuck doing being a ditch digger. I got another job with a D&D satellite company where they would pick me up on the side of the river, and we would go out and do home satellite installation. A lot of crawling through crawl spaces, which I was really good at, or up on the rooftops adjusting satellite dishes, and that was a bit into the tech sector, which really kind of opened my eyes to technology more, but also I improved my reputation as a good worker. There were several homes out there that I guess richer people had, and that during the off months, the winter months and the fall, they would look for caretakers. And I got a couple referrals where I would mow the lawns and trim the hedges, and, stock firewood up to get it ready for them to come move in, and a lot of landscaping stuff. And I began to realize with that job, no real oversight. I just had a list of things to accomplish, and then the freedom to add to as I see needed fit to bring the land up to speed. I quickly learned the value of this, that I would literally go to the nearest town Walmart and make a list of things I wanted to buy. And I would add that number up and then figure out, okay, that's how much money I needed to earn. And I would work backwards into hedge trimming, lawn maintenance, and calculate so I earned that much. So I literally learned how, kind of cook in the books kind of thing. This is how much money I needed, and let's backwards formulate how to earn this much money on this particular job. And so it was definitely sketchy, and then submit a bill and get paid and go buy the stuff I wanted. That kind of manipulating the system to get my needs met was, I recognized the lack of oversight and quickly took advantage of it. I had that on a number of properties. Let's see, when fires would break out in the summertime in Northern California, it was a big deal. There was a lot of firefighters out there, a lot of support for the firefighters. And there was a company that supplied they contracted the cooks and the restrooms, the facilities, the camp, all the support needed to run a base camp up in the mountains. And I remember getting a couple jobs up there where I'd go up and I'd work in the cook line, and in the big semis with the food trucks come up, and you're just dishing out food for hundreds and hundreds of firefighters. And those jobs are intense because there's no you could work 20 hours a day, and go crash out in the back of the semi for 4 hours and 20 hours a day and, log hundreds of hours. And the money was huge, a lot of money for someone that at that age. And that was like my realization that there's no real upper limit to how much money you just put the effort in, and you can make tons of money on that. I love those kind of gigs and those crazy, insane hours where back to back, you're not sleeping, you're just working crazy hours. And, I thrived in those kind of chaotic environments. I got another job with Bigfoot Recreation. Down the Klamath River further along, there was a resort, like a campground resort center where they bring in Boy Scout troops, and they have little cabins, and they would, take them out rafting and canoeing and kayaking. And I got in tight with them, and I learned how to, develop my whitewater skills, my canoeing skills, my kayaking skills, and started working with them on bringing Boy Scouts down the river. And man, quickly developed a reputation. The guy with the machete in his canoe, and I'd go ahead and set up a base camp for him. And I got a lot of responsibilities at a young age of, a lot of independence of going out and being a good river rat and knowing how to take people down the rapids safely. I love that. Out in the outdoors, a lot of working with younger people or as a guide, people looking up to you. Take them down the river because you know how to handle the situation. They're kind of scared and timid. And then there's always just, if I needed money, there's, cutting firewood. Oh man, just always going out in the woods, felling snags with a chainsaw, cutting them up, stacking firewood, good hard labor, making the sales, a lot of hustle. I worked another summer at a wood mill, and like the old school logs come up the logging truck, into the giant saw, cutting them up, bucking them, and I was like picking up scraps and stacking, and I got paid by the core of firewood I stacked. So you can imagine picking up firewood all day and stacking it all day long, and you getting paid for how many big stacks you make, and it was something simple like $5 a cord, but for just stacking it. And man, the forearms just burning, and every day, all of that. I mean, crazy grip strength to develop, crazy work ethic you got. And just, really, I'd work really hard. I would have this, really work on my reputation. And at the same time, any opportunity to exploit, take advantage, cash in, we were always looking out for that way of, making it work out to your best possible advantage. Even down to, I'm stacking the firewood, and I know I'm getting paid for how big the stack is. So the way you position the piece of firewood takes up more space if you stack it tight. And so you'd be, calculating the least amount of pieces of wood to place to still make the same size stack. All that, always that little extra edge, shoveling gravel, how to best hit the shovel head to get the most amount of leverage, the biggest amount of scoop, and the best, trying to constantly fine tune the motion to make it more efficient. Everything was always down to this hyper perception of what's most efficient, how to best get this done. It was a non-stop way of just approaching everything. And all these jobs, that was like I don't know if I got something out of it, a buzz, but man, a lot of work for someone that age, and a lot of constantly staying busy, staying employed, working on the reputation, and making a name for myself. That was a big deal. So work a lot in those years on the Klamath River. I definitely was always had 2 or 3 gigs going, which was amazing for how isolated we were. We ended up living up there in the town of Horse Creek, population 89. And we're like, over an hour from the nearest stoplight. It's very remote, and I could easily see someone not working out there. They're just very remote, but wasn't the case for me. I saw the advantages of it, having an income, and been a lot of time hustling out there on the Klamath River. If you've made it this far, it means you're hungry for more.
I got 3 things for you. Click on the links below. For 1, get on our mailing list. You can pre-order the book coming out this summer. 2, our Patreon account. You get tiered access to exclusive content. And 3, visit our social media sites. There's a lot out there I want you to see. Do it. Do it now.